Okay, welcome everybody to our Finance Committee meeting for August 17th, 2022. It's about 6:30 p.m. Let's go with the roll call. Ms. Belcher.
Jim Ghost,
Here.
Damon Capel,
Here.
Joe St. John is absent, Marie Neff,
Here.
John Grumney,
Here.
David Martin is absent, Cindy Cooper. Here. 5 present.
Thank you. Okay, let's look at the minutes from our last meeting, July 20th, 2022. Any changes or corrections or a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Grumney,
Second.
second by Mr. Capel. Any further discussion? A roll call?
John Grumney,
Yes.
Damon Capel,
Yes.
Jim Ghost,
Yes.
Marie Neff,
Yes.
Cindy Cooper. Yes. 5 yeas.
Minutes passed. Okay, we've got a few things on the agenda this evening. We have the city council pay ordinance and the impact fee ordinance discussion coming up for council. And then we have a wastewater treatment plant task order to talk about. So let's start with the city council pay ordinance. A little background first. I think some of you may already know this, but it was October of last year where we passed the ordinance for this year. We currently are paid $5,000 a year. Council members, mayor is $17,000. At that, well, actually, we gotta go back.
Right. Is it? I don't think it's.
Yeah, I think he's 17,000 according to the table, correct, Ms. Belcher? Currently.
For, what'd you say for council?
Council's 5,000.
Okay.
So for this year, so this all goes back to 2020 when I believe it was Mr. Capel and I on the subcommittee of finance with Ms. Belcher talked about pay increases and doing it on an incremental basis. So we came up with a 5-year plan. At that time, we were making council was earning $1,900 per year, and the mayor's salary was $10,000. And so at the end of the 5-year period, actually starting in 2025, the goal was to get to the service credit minimum for the employee retirement system of a minimum of $8,800. And so that was our idea back then. And so per our charter and per the ordinance, every year we have to pass a new ordinance for the new year for our pay. Okay, just like we did last year in October. For this year, we did ordinance number 2021.44. So what we have to do is decide if we want to do an increase for next year and the years thereafter, and what it might look like. So we have a choice. We can continue on this current schedule that we have. I think you have this in your packet, or the other option could be to forego the schedule and simply meet the public employee retirement system minimum for next year. So I don't know. I'm going to open that up to discussion. Anybody have a thought on that?
Yeah, I guess I was looking at this too, and if the goal is to get to that 8,800 service credit in 2025, I guess I don't see necessarily the point of continuously going up. And I would just suggest that we go to the full amount if that was the goal, and that way we can go back down to maybe a modest increase moving forward. Looking to it, I would even question. I've been actually questioning a lot of these. Looking at the mayor's pay, I feel like that's pretty low. Comparatively speaking, when I hear reports of mayors who don't manage a police department getting, upwards of $60,000 and $70,000 a year, and then I kind of looking at this too. If we were to move to the 2025 number of the 8,800, I look at the president of council who I would definitely argue does more work than a traditional council member. And I
Yeah,
feel like, that should be represented as well with maybe, a $5,000-$10,000 bump above a traditional council member. I was thinking about this the other day, and I don't see why these percentages are so large moving up. I just don't see why we need to continuously do it every single year, is to just get there, get it done, and then go to the modest, where I can see 143, 156, 159, and then move down the list that way.
yeah, that's a good point. I think I was trying to think back to when we looked at this with Kathy a few years ago. I think the incremental approach was based on just from a budgeting perspective, right?
Yeah.
Just to soften the blow.
Better to the public to go like this instead of going like that, but that's your decision.
I couldn't
We can make
remember specifically if it was budgetary or if it was just simply the optics of it. And I talked to Murray about this a while ago. I think there is something to be said for, which is optically better, to add a significant pay raise on every year for 6 years, or to just do one that's larger, obviously. Because it does make sense to avoid doing this every year and having to revisit this every year. But my question is, and it didn't occur to me until more recently, if we are tying ourselves to the OPERS minimum, do we have to do this every year to adjust to OPERS? Or
Yeah, that's a good question.
OPERS changes every year.
It does, and it's by a small amount.
Yeah, and that's,
So
Historically, they change less than a
100,
half percent a year. On average, I think, right?
if you want to tie it to PERS each year, you'd have to have at least you'd have to start with like Murray says, the 25, and then do the smaller amounts thereafter to keep up with PERS. So you have your full credit.
So we would still have to
Still have to do something.
have an ordinance every year.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the ordinance would be significantly smaller.
Sure.
Yeah, would be 150, 160.
You're talking about less than 0.5%
Yeah.
each year.
Yeah, it's the top.
Once you get to this
Right.
service credit minimum.
Absolutely. It's something obviously people don't want to really talk about, so we don't want to have this conversation every year for 6 years. So I would suggest, and it's obviously just a suggestion, just to get there, get it done. And I think when this was written, it was written, obviously I wasn't here at that time, but I think it was written with the vision of coming out of a village. We weren't necessarily, or maybe we were just becoming a city. So we still had village lenses on where we looked at kind of this stuff. But now that we're a city, there's obviously exponential growth. The growth of Sunbury is one of the fastest in the county, if not the. So, I just feel like we're making things and we're doing things in the events committee that are going to be something that we can sustain for the future. I think you looking at council members in the future, if we can get there now, it's done, it's over with, and we don't have to really discuss it anymore.
That was one thing I was thinking. I'm looking at my notes here for reference, and by no means am I making a direct correlation, just for reference. January 2020, there was a council position and one person applied. January 2022, there was a council position, 3 people applied. May of 2021, there was a council position, 4 people applied. In December of 2021, there was a council position and 8 people applied. Now, I'm not making the direct correlation that council salaries increased over time, and that's why more people applied. I think there was multiple reasons, but historically, we've had a difficult time getting residents to run for council and apply for council. And so I think we are not even considering the folks who are on council. We're looking to the future council members, and we want to make sure that we can still get folks running and applying for council. I think we need to take that into consideration.
That was the primary reason that we approached that in the first place.
Yeah.
Is that we were very out of step with other similar size villages and cities. And it is definitely not that we want people to focus on the paycheck when they run for council or when they apply for a vacancy.
Right.
But we definitely want to provide an incentive for them to do the work that's required. As
For-
part of the
for their
position. And to
time.
Murray's point, that position is getting busier as time goes on, and we form more committees and have more things to do. I can tell it's busier than it was a few years ago already. So I do think that to an extent it's justified. And we tied it to the OPERS minimum almost randomly, but as we were already paying into OPERS and not really getting much out of it, that made sense. It was kind of in the range of what we were already thinking as a potential pay rate. It goes up in small increments every year. So, you know, it would give us a point of constancy to tie to that.
Mhm. And just for comparison, I have a table here from Morpsey. It's fairly, I think, recent, July 20th. There's an email here from Mr. Mayor who sent out the information. So for city of Canal Winchester, for example, these are council member numbers, 6,921. Circleville is 6,137. Of course, Columbus is 60,000. Quite a different scenario there. Delaware is 10,000. Dublin is 11. Gahanna is 9,600. Grandview Heights 7,200. Grove City 11,000. Hilliard 14,000. Again, these are all just council member compensation annual pay. Lancaster 9,400. Pataskala 5,071. Reynoldsburg 7,920. Upper Arlington 8,218. Westerville's 9,000.
What's the OPERS this year, Kathy?
Yeah.
Oh, they already know what the OPERS is going to be in the next few years?
They had it quoted on there. That's
Yeah.
that's your service credit over there.
Oh, okay. I see.
8,343.
So the 8,000, the high 8,000s and then into the low 9,000s seems very on par for our size city with what you're reading off, in my opinion.
Yeah, for
It
example,
seems fair.
if we were to tie this to this OPERS table, for example, in year 2029, the service credit minimum is 9,420. And for next year, for 2023, it's 8,489.
Do you have a list like that for mayor salaries?
I actually do. It's part of
Could you
this.
read some of those? 'Cause
Yeah.
in that list that we have, it's also, it plateaus at 25,000 and it doesn't go up on this chart.
Yeah, so for the mayor table comparison, I have, this is
So
elected
the mayor currently made 17,000.
this
this
year,
year, okay.
Mayor St. John.
Okay.
And so an elected mayor with police management for Canal Winchester actually says $100,000. Circleville is 42,000. City of Columbus, 200,000. Gahanna, 103,000. Grandview Heights, 48,000. Lancaster, 97,000. Whitehall, 95,000. I'm guessing they consider that a full-time position pay,
Sure.
obviously. So this position here in Sunbury is not. So you could look at those numbers and divide by half, I suppose.
What was the first number? Who was that you read?
Canal Winchester,
And what was that?
100,000.
Okay.
So no, there really is not a small city there.
What was-
Circleville's 42,000. I think that's the smallest of the group here. That's on the chart. Canal Winchester, that's really high.
Into Circleville full-time then? Or do you know?
Circleville full, I don't know. I'm just.
And they all
speculating.
manage police? Or we don't know?
That's mayor with police management, elected position.
Okay.
If you don't manage the police,
Which for the
It's a
record,
lot less.
our mayor manages the police, for the record.
correct, yes.
Circleville is part-time and he does manage the police.
And what was Circleville's 22?
Circleville's 42,000.
42.
Elected position with police management. Did you say part-time, Wes?
Yeah, he is
Part-time, 42,000.
Okay. Wes, can you look up real quick what the population of Circleville is?
10, 12, 13, something
Okay.
in that range.
So
Sure.
bigger than us, but not significantly.
Yeah. That's about right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, those are interesting numbers. I would support an increase for our mayor position. I would also be interested in your opinions. I would also support a tiered position, a tiered salary for the president of council. I'm not sure if all of the council members are aware of, there's a big difference. There's a standing Tuesday morning meeting. Really, the president of council is the mayor's right-hand go-to person. You are in the president of council is in a significant amount of meetings. He works very closely with our staff and also shares information with the rest of council. That position deserves to be paid more than a regular council position, in my opinion.
I agree with that also, and I think that my recommendation would be that so we have a little bit of time to work with this. I would recommend that we have another meeting of the finance subcommittee to hash out the details on this.
Yeah.
And come back to council again in a month with a little more of a detailed idea of what.
You guys think you could meet between now and next month?
Hope so.
Yeah.
It should
Okay.
be able to.
Also, we did not want to move forward. My plan was not to move forward on anything without
Mhm.
mayor's public commentary.
Mr. Martin.
Mr. Martin. So that would be the next finance meeting in a month. Regarding budgeting, that still gives us plenty of time, Dana and Kathy. I mean, last year we passed this in October, first Wednesday in October. So if we push this out another month, have the mayor.
Dana has a good idea on what she knows where you guys are heading, so she can drop it in. Whether doesn't mean you have to have it done. We can she will plan on having it done.
And I'd like to just add my 2 cents, but I think it's a great conversation. I agree with everything everyone said. I definitely think the mayor, and seeing the work that he does, the job he does, the accountability that he has, increasing his compensation, I think is very justifiable. I think I also agree with the president, an increased salary. And I also like what Murray mentioned earlier, the concept of it's rather than incremental going for the 8. What is it? The 8. And the reason behind that is not necessarily we're all going to get, we're looking for the money to get rich in this job. It's a dedicated service, it's public service. But I do think one of the benefits of public service is the retirement system, and that is putting contributions towards retirement. And if the 8 puts you to a point, future council members, where they get the full service credit for that service, I think that only makes sense. We're not talking about a huge dollar amount, but I understand the perception, and I'm sensitive to that, and I appreciate that. But I also think we have to look, as was said earlier, the future. The growth that this city has already seen and will continue to see over the next 5, 10, 15 years. We'll have Intel coming in, the new interchange coming in, the housing developments. This job is only going to get more complex and more involved. And I think we have to be a little bit more proactive in our thoughts about maintaining and attracting the right people for the job.
Well said. Yeah, I can't really add any more to that other than, again, I think we none of us do this for the money. I think it's safe to say that we're here to serve the public and do our best and give back. It's just an opportunity, like John said, to bring the compensation up again to a point where I think we can maintain and attract future positive and favorable and attractive candidates to fill our shoes. So. Okay, if no more
So
discussion.
you guys will set a meeting
We'll get
with Kathy.
with
Was it
Kathy
you two and Kathy
and Dana, to
was it
set,
just you two from council?
It was just us two the last time, I believe, but we.
I'd like to have someone else in on that. I don't know, Cindy or Murray or.
Yeah.
I'd like
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, Murray can do it.
I'd like to do it.
Okay. We can have 3 of us on a subcommittee, can we, Kathy? To meet in person.
You and Damon and Murray.
Right, yeah.
So we'll set a
You'll
date
plan on
between now and the
before.
next finance meeting, and then
Okay.
hopefully in the next meeting, we'll have this drilled down a little bit further and get Mr. Mayor's input.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, very good. Let's go to the impact fee discussion. So tonight we have the ordinance. This is the first reading this evening for impact fees. Just a little background, high level overview. So this process began way back in, I think it was 2020. Actually, it was prompted by Mr. Paul Holler, one of our local residents. He came forward to council. Some of you might remember that. And he prompted everything and got us on the ball. And so we started looking into it. If I'm not mistaken, the last update we had, I mean, current impact fees structure was, I want to say 20 years ago. Was it that long ago since we touched it?
It was 2003.
Almost 2003. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So so that began the process. Many thanks to Mr. Holler. And I think, is that him out there?
Yeah.
It looks like him. Don't have my glasses on. Got to tip my hat to you, sir. So you helped spur us on. So anyhow, apologize for the amount of time it's taken, but we've tried to do our due diligence and get things right. An RFP went out in September of 2020, and following that process, we finally engaged the services of Tischler and Weiss, which is probably the most recognizable name in the area for doing these surveys and assessments. And that was in spring of 2021. They prepared their study of the study as to what we could look at and possibly do. And so that was in January of 2022, if I'm not mistaken, on their first draft. And then, of course, we had several follow-up meetings and discussions with them. And I think the final draft was just a few months ago in June, right, Steve?
Yes.
And before that, Tischler and Weiss had presented its report to council. I think it was the rough draft. That would have been earlier this year.
It was. Yeah.
If you all might remember that. So since then, several discussions ensued with not only them, but the developers. We wanted to make sure that, they were aware of the process, and we had to explore some, possible credits and offsets with some of the current developments as well. And there's a lot of legality that we had to look into. So it took a lot of time. We just wanted to make sure we did it right. So Mr. Mayor also presented to the BIA, the Building Industry Association, I think that might have been April or May, Murray, of this year, with the likely fee structure and what it would look like. And turns out it's pretty competitive with the other surrounding communities. And we think it's very fair and reasonable. And the developers are, I think, on board now. So the ordinance itself, you'll see it there in the package. It's just a first reading. As part of that, we're going to talk about having a phase-in approach. I think it's the most equitable way to approach it, so the builders can plan their pricing structure accordingly. 50% of the maximum fee on January 1 of 2023 is what we suggest. The other another 25% of the maximum fee on July 1 of 2023, and then the full fee in force January 1, 2024. So that's the high level view. I don't know, Steve, can you pull up? I don't know if any of you want to actually see the proposed fee schedule.
It's in your packet.
You have the packet there? Okay.
Page 3 is probably page 4.
Let's see.
Figure 2 is the best place to find that. And while you're looking at that, I might add that
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
between 2003 and 2019, when I arrived, there was a provision in the ordinance that allowed incremental increases based upon construction costs. And those hadn't been, I don't know if for whatever reason they weren't touched. And when I discovered that in the ordinance, I talked with those in charge at that time and said, we really need to consider that. So part of the reason you're seeing such a large movement is they were frozen 16 out of the last almost 20 years. So,
Right. And even though this is a substantial increase, it's really because there was the existing fees are really so low. We're bringing them up into an area where we think it's very competitive. I had that sheet. Let's see. For example, proposed fee for Sunbury Municipal is 1,710. I believe this is for residential. This is a residential number.
that's single family
Yeah.
residential, yes.
He's just single family. Police is 550. So parks is 825. Incidentally, this will be the first parks fee, park and rec impact fee. That's at 825. Streets is 820. And so that's a total of 3904. One-time impact fee payment that the builder will collect when the permit is issued. Correct, Steve?
That's when its payment is due, yes.
Yeah. And so for comparison, the total for Pickerington is 3866. Lebanon, 3830. Let's see, Delaware is 2104. So if we look down at the multifamily section, we're sort of slightly high on that, but there's some other municipalities that are similar. Multifamily numbers, 1097 municipal, 353 police, 529 parks, 557 streets. That's a total of 2535. Lebanon, for example, is 2586. Pickerington's 2408. So we're definitely in the ballpark. Tischler and Weiss feels this is appropriate. I don't know if there's anything else you all want to add, but I'll look to Steve, maybe Daryl or Steve has something else to add.
Again, their methodology is sound. We'd had to give them some adjustments on housing unit expectations and population unit expectations, because those changed in the last year. The concept is that we establish a level of service for our municipal facilities, for our police department, and then Parks and Rec based upon what we're doing now or what we project to do in our capital improvement plans. And then they look at how growth impacts that, and with the concept being that the new housing and the new other activity, commercial activity that comes in helps to pay for the increased capital demands that they're creating on our roadways, on our police department, from cruisers to facilities. Same thing with municipal facilities, and then also with recreation. Our recreation fee is heavily geared toward building out our current parks and the amenities that are in those, increasing those. So that's all I'd add.
Okay, very good.
When was the
Right.
first phase in to hit?
January 1st of 23.
3 or 4 months from now, that would be 50%. I might grab my notes. My memory serves 50% starting January 1, 2023 of the maximum
So
fee.
have somebody already talked or spoke with projects that are currently underway?
Yes, we've had lengthy.
Yes.
Go ahead, Steve. You may want to
Yeah.
opine on that.
Everyone's aware of it, and that's been some of what we've been working on, is how we deal with those developers that are in the process of planning or construction. So
Yeah, so once this was put on the table many months ago with, the other developments that are about to begin and the current ones that are in play, we had to have discussions with them about how this would affect their developments. And so, in their legal counsel, and, you know, we had to really vet all of that out and make sure that we were doing it fair and reasonable and responsible. So that, you know, all parties could move forward and continue with the developments in a responsible manner. So that's how we approach
Extra
it.
work that president of council did, huh?
Yes, but nothing compared to Steve, Wes, and Daryl and Mr. Mayor. They worked a lot harder, but
We anticipate a rush of permit requests before December 31st or before.
What's our permit good for? I think 6 months they have to start, so,
Okay, so they would have had to start.
yeah. And, you know, they'll have some time. You know, we have softened the landing, so.
yeah, this is just a first reading tonight.
Yeah.
You know, I foresee it going the full 3 readings. I think this being something that's very impactful, no pun intended, to the village and other developers and our future growth.
That pun was intended.
Yeah. We're gonna wanna, you know, do it, have full public input and allow that to happen and take place for the full 3 readings.
Mr. President, could I make a comment, please?
Sure. I think we probably needs to come to the microphone. Is that on? If you could just state your name, Mr. Holler, your address again.
Paul Holler, I live at 575 Red Shank Road. I want to reinforce what the administrator said. The official report has 1 or 2 sentences about inflation. Obviously, that it needs to be taken into consideration. I'll remind you, the existing ordinance includes wording something to the effect of the zoning administrator has the authority to automatically increase the impact fees annually based on, I think it's called the construction index. And that's in the ordinance right now. I suggest that some similar verbiage should be in there to make it automatic. And then the existing ordinance also says the council can, the council can go above that. But if you stick with the construction index, it doesn't even have to go before the council at all. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yes, I think that's very, very good, valid points there. Thank you, Mr. Holler. Take that into consideration.
I believe it's still in there.
Yeah, I actually have it here, but my printout was losing its ink. So, happened while I lost the last 3 pages, but
I am
you see it in there, Steve?
darn near certain it's in here. But I'm,
Yes, I don't foresee in the new ordinance that we're going to be amending that verbiage or language, to my knowledge.
yeah, it's in 96304.
Oh, 4.
Yeah, that's same.
Okay.
No, that's about credits. It's in there.
Okay. I do see calculation and 07. I don't believe we've proposed amending that provision at all, have we, Steve or Daryl?
Nope, the annual adjustment thing's pretty much as is. Yes.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Any further discussion? Comment? Okay, very good. All right, let's go to the wastewater treatment plant, task order number 1 for design services. Mr. Hall, can you fill us in on that?
Sure, thank you. I was gonna have you turn to page 14 of your packet and kind of explain the why first. And we start with part three, one of the whys is the existing capacity is nearing maximum capacity. Currently, you're around 850,000 gallons a day to 900. Your current plant capacity is 1,125,000. So about 275,000 gallons of available per day. What this proposal is, so everybody's aware initially that we started off with phase 0 or the interim phase, which is what we've designed already. And there's been a consensus over the last couple months that we've talked about to go ahead and move forward with phases 1 and 2 as part of that. So that's going to take the plant capacity from 1.125 to 2 million gallons a day. Needed just to provide a margin there with the growth that is occurring. A couple other reasons. I mean, we entered into an agreement with Delaware County Regional Sewer a few years ago to service a certain area, which is basically everything east of South Galena Road, as far north as Rosecrans. There's a lot of developer interest around that area, obviously. So just finishing off the capacity, if you look at 3.2 on page 14, the future plant would be 2 million a day, existing 1.125. That would get you an additional capacity, 875. Currently have 275. So as you stand right now, you would have a capacity of 1.15 after the expansion.
Mhm.
To put that in terms of housing units is what part 3.4. So I tried to provide a summary there. A good rule of thumb per housing unit is 300 gallons per day. So when you take that on your existing capacity of 917 housing units that you have remaining right now to provide service to, took a quick look. Steve's pulling some more numbers for me, but just Price Ponds, 336 lots, Rolling Hills, 150. Kittner Crossing is pending. That's 197 units. Granville Street multifamily commercial pending, but that's 120 units. That brings us up to 803 units. And then we still have all the remaining lots existing in the developments right now. Sunbury Meadows, Miller's Cove, et cetera. So just putting that number at a placeholder of 200, there's essentially 1,000 units that are either pending or have been approved. So when you compare that to the 917 existing right now, so you're kind of right there. Now that doesn't mean that you're going to pull 1,000 permits within a 2-year period. You know, your permits could range from 50, 75, 100 per year. So there's time, but when we tell a developer that there's capacity available, we need to make sure that there's capacity available. So this just gave a quick snapshot, part 3 of the available, the existing and then the additional capacity. So when we take the existing capacity of 917 housing units, and we take the additional capacity with a flow of 875,000 divided by 300, gets you 2,917 units. Your total available capacity in terms of housing units after the expansion would be 3,833. And that's what we look for about a 15 to a 20 year outlook. So that's a little bit more background. Last time the plant was improved, any major upgrade was 2004. So you're approaching that 20-year point. When we go over the cost next, one big component of the cost estimate is a replacement of a lot of the existing equipment that's just reached its life. Any questions on the capacity or growth or housing units before we go into cost?
I guess my question
Sure.
before cost is there, so we choose this number for growth, but what's the exponential cost or the relative cost to go even slightly bigger to even add a little bit more padding, just so we're not 20 years from now going, man, I wish we,
Right.
based on the way things are priced and the way we're growing, I sure do wish we would have added more at that time.
Couple factors there. One is when you apply for construction loan through Ohio EPA, they're going to want to see some kind of reasonable growth estimation. I mean, we could say, let's build a 5 million gallon a day plant, but they're going to want to see a growth projection that's reasonable, that would make sense to loan that kind of money to a village or a city. Step one. Two, that's, we're talking about almost 4,000 housing units, quite a bit of growth, so if you apply 3 people per housing unit or 2.7, that's quite an increase in growth. So, as far as future expansion beyond 2 million gallons a day, we are looking at that. We have looked at it. We think on the existing wastewater plant site with a slight expansion north, we'll have to talk with the schools that you can get almost up to 4.5 million gallons a day from that existing site with a slight acquisition north of the existing plant. So there's plenty of room for growth. The other good news as far as beyond 2 million gallons a day is the cost per gallon to gain additional capacity comes down because we've already replaced a lot of the equipment. We would have to add another oxidation ditch, a 4th clarifier, maybe increase the pumping system. So it would be incrementally, the cost would be much less when you go from 2 to 3. So that's a snapshot on capacity. Item 3.5 is an important one. So when you take just the additional capacity in terms of housing units, and assuming that that's good for a 20-year growth period, and you look at your current capacity fee or your sanitary sewer connection fee, and it's based on a 3/4 inch water connection, took the average over the 20-year period, which includes a 3% annual increase. Average tap for this calculation, 12,707 times the 2,917 would bring in a revenue of $37 million as far as capacity fees. So what that means is as each new connection comes in, that capacity fee pays for the growth, pays for that plant improvement. So the only risk there is the housing units have to be coming in. I think your risk is
What's the hedge?
much less than some other areas around the state of Ohio.
What's our hedge if construction halts?
Well, back when the 2004 plant was expanded, one thing the village did at that time was they entered into a tap fee reimbursement agreement with Dominion Homes at the time, which is Pulte now. They pre-purchased through a tap agreement 750 taps for a 10-year period. So they had income coming in, or the village did, of 75 taps a year for 10 years, and that covered the loan payment essentially.
I remember that.
Now in 2008, we readjusted that a little bit just based on the recession, but there is the opportunity to look at tap agreements with developers to potentially commit to a certain number of taps per year, but if you build it, they will come.
Is this the plan that looked at capacity for the growth east, west, and anticipating the Intel
facility
expansion?
The facility plan, which was done already, was kind of done prior to the Intel site being known, but it included a reasonable growth rate, around the village and normal absorptions rate. It's probably on the low side on what you are potentially going to see with the Intel site and everything else going on. So, yeah, it's better to get started now than wait.
In the application process, it's a year away.
Yeah, I want to go
for
through
the loan, the funding.
Want to go through the schedule and the application and the costs there next. So, So that's a snapshot of capacity and the potential revenue from the capacity fees with that increased capacity. As far as schedule, right at the top of page 14, just laid out a preliminary schedule based on what we know at this point. So if we get started in September, we're looking at to have the construction complete by April of 25. It's a long process. There's a lot of design that has to happen. EPA has a permit review process, bid advertisement period, contract award, and the construction period, 550 days, roughly about 18 months or a year and a half to complete construction. And that's probably on the quick side right now, just considering supply chain and contractors backlog at this time. So that's a snapshot on the schedule. As far as the funding and the application process with the loan money, our current agreement on phase 0 had a 0% design loan with Ohio EPA. That would be amended to include this improvement that you can apply for every month. So that would get you started on funding to proceed with design services. The next application with the Ohio EPA would be the construction loan, and that's one time a year in August. And so what we're trying to do is have the plans done, bid this project, and have a really good number to go into August of 23 with the construction loan. And then what would happen is the design loan would roll into the construction loan. Then you would have one payment, and that would activate after the construction is complete. So there wouldn't be any payments due. You'll accrue interest during construction, but then
So we get to push out your design fee.
yes,
along with it.
I mean,
The payment of it.
it'll roll into the construction loan, and then that would become due in 2025.
And those payments, that servicing of that loan comes out of the sewer fund, correct?
Correct.
And we got a current balance of about 4.7 million. And I think it's on plan for the year. Kathy or Dana, have you looked at this at all yet in terms of it being doable and manageable
Yeah,
from a finance perspective?
I've looked at the debt payments in the past and what we expect to be coming in for the debt through the sewer operating and what we're gonna be obligated to pay for debt service for super in the coming years. And it's definitely very healthy and able to sort of satisfy these debt requirements. I think even if with the future expansion up to 2 million.
If you would turn to page 13, I can run through the costs. And these costs are what we call the pre-design stage. So 1.1 is the cost for the different phases. And that's how we have it broken out right now in the facilities plan. So that's why they're presented in 3 phases. Phase 0, we've been through design on that. So that's why that has a 10% contingency. Or as we move through the design process, the contingency will drop. Phase 1 and 2 have a 30% contingency. So phase 0, 1, 2, and there's a placeholder for miscellaneous site and facility improvements, being any doors, window, roof repairs, any site improvements as far as paving, fencing, etc. Tally those up, that's 14.6 million. Phase 0 is our current phase. That's our current agreement right now to design phase 0, the 200,000. 1.3 would be an amendment to our current agreement to design phases 1 and 2 and provide the design and bidding services. Survey, detailed design, the EPA submission and the bidding, 720,000. And when you add up the 14,600, the 720, that brings you to 15.52. That does not include the construction observation administration services. And I just added a little bit more contingency, and right now I'm just setting a placeholder cost for the pre-designed total project cost at 16.5 million.
That includes the contingencies above you spoke
That
of,
includes everything above,
and
correct?
that's the pre-design cost phase.
Pre-designed, right? So that when you look back up into 1.1 and you see phase one with a 30%, that's a 30% construction contingency. As we move through this design and we refine that number, that 30% will come down to 10%. It may not mean that 6 million is going to change. I mean, it could, but we want to be conservative right now as far as the total and the contingencies. So that's the snapshot on the costs. I did want to point you to, I know we only have a few minutes left, on page 15 of your packet. We prepared a memo and we've already met with the administration a few times on this, and Dale as well. This just goes through, so when you have a few minutes, read through this. It provides a little bit more about the funding, the design loan timeline, construction loan. It has a draft task order in there to move forward with the Amendment 1 services, which is the upgrade to 2 MGD. And then we also have included, if you look at page 21, we wrote this in May, and this goes through, if you want to see the improvements included, this has a nice breakdown. And we prepared a table to illustrate what component would be a capacity increase and what component is strictly replacement, or sometimes both. So it provides a nice overview of the improvements needed. And then on page 25, 26, 27 are the detailed cost estimates for phase 0, 1, and 2. So just wanted to point out that memo is in your packet, and please review that when you have time. So next steps would be to authorize amendment number 1 and then move forward with a addendum or an amendment to your current design loan to include these services so we can move forward with design on this.
And you don't need that this evening.
No,
That can wait
I'm just
for next
explaining
meeting
what
or
the
next
step is.
30 days. We could have it available
Sure, that
Okay.
would be fine.
for authorization. Okay, any further questions or comments to Mr. Hall? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this has been through the services committee as well, hasn't
We
it?
talked about it in general, not in this detail
Detail.
with costs and scope and so on, but we've had some discussion on it, yes.
Can I ask one, I'm sorry, one clarifying
Mhm.
question, Wes. When you were talking about the cost phase 1 and 2 with 30% contingency, and you said they'll probably go down, but the 6 million might not change. So how does that work then? So if we go from 30 to 10%, wouldn't the 6 million budget go down by that 20% or no?
So if there's a component in that cost estimate that we're estimating now at, just say, $1 million, and that actual cost is actually, $1.3 million.
Hmm.
Then the base cost is going to come up. So
Okay.
it'll eat into that contingency.
see.
So we're just not knowing.
Trying to ballpark it, just play both sides of it then, I'm assuming.
Right, and that's
Okay.
kind of standard practice. You
Okay.
build in a high contingency when you start design, and then it'll trickle
Okay.
down as you move through design.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Hall. Just have a few minutes left before the council meeting. Is there anything further anybody wants to discuss this evening? Ms. Belcher, Dana, anything on the numbers? Okay, no glaring issues or problems? On par for the most part. Okay. Anything further from anyone else? If not, we'll entertain a motion to
we're not gonna have time, but I had asked Dana if she would present just a quick update on the budget planning process. Just mostly for the newer council members. I'm wondering if it's okay with you, maybe she could present that during the visitor section. I don't think it would take long, right, Dana? if you're okay with that, maybe during the visitor section of council, she could give us an update on the budgeting process.
That okay with you?
Okay, thank you.
Sounds
And
good.
then I'll motion to adjourn.
Thanks for bringing that up. Motion by Ms. Cooper to adjourn,
Second.
second by Mr. Neff. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, Ms. Belcher.
Cindy Cooper,
Yes.
Murray Neff,
Yes.
John Grumney,
Yes.
Jim Goes,
Yes,
Dana Capel,
Yes.
5 yeas.
meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Recording stopped.